Welcome back to the Zone In Podcast, everybody. As always, I'm Joey Meatballs. Alongside me, we got Big Mo, KP, and the Skinwalker himself, Weezo. Before we dive into our Team of the Week, Player of the Week segments, I just want to give a quick shout out to a player who did not make it as my Player of the Week because I may have ruined him for multiple people on this podcast. And that would be Derek White with his first career triple-double. Derek, we love you in Boston, and we thank you for everything. And I wish I could put you as Player of the Week, but I don't want Carl to get mad at me.
That wasn't needed, Joey.
Moving on. All right, now for Team of the Week, we'll dive right in here. My Team of the Week is actually the same as last week because they are still hot on that going on now, I believe, 7-game win streak. And that is the Houston Rockets. Their young guys have been stepping up, playing great ball. And honestly, you know, with a 127-117 win against Chicago 2 nights ago, or last night, 2 nights ago, and a 137-114 win against Washington. They looked great. It was just good basketball. Granted, you know, Chicago and Washington aren't the best teams in the NBA right now, but it is still the NBA basketball. It is tough basketball, even though Washington probably would lose to Purdue or UConn right now. But, you know, Houston Rockets have looked great. I'd love to see them keep it going and make a little playoff push. We'll see. Big Mo?
This is one that'll come to no one's surprise. But for my Team of the Week here, I have the Orlando Magic. They are 3-0 this week. A 111-96 win over the Raptors. A 112-92 win over the Hornets. Taking care of in division pretty well. And a 121-106 win over a healthy Pelicans team, which is very good because the Pelicans have also been a hot team in a playoff push as of late. But, you know, this is a really young Magic team, and we're seeing them make a push that we haven't seen the Magic make for the playoffs since, like, 2020 and farther beyond. They are currently the 4th seed in the East, and they have another playoff-ish matchup against the Kings tonight at 7 o'clock, which will be another big test for them. But don't sleep on the Magic going forward. I think this is a team that could shake it up in the playoffs, and they continue to show that week in and week out.
Yeah, you know, we love the Magic on the Zoned In podcast. Orlando Magic. Orlando Magic. Whoa. I can't believe they fired their media guy. That's a shame.
It's honestly
That's a shame, man.
That is a shame.
It's a dang shame.
Especially with all the incident with Grady Dick. It's tough. It's tough that that's the main reason, man. I mean, it's just.
He was.
They came together and they asked him to take the picture. It's not like
it was their fault.
That Orlando Magic song, those videos, it was the biggest sports social media trend of the year. I mean,
and the Orlando Magic, they're not like a giant market. They don't get that much attention from the rest of the league.
Exactly.
So I think that really helped them, especially with the younger fans.
Yeah, I was keeping tabs on the Magic just because of their social media.
All right, KP, take it away.
All right. So for my Team of the Week, I went with the Dallas Mavericks. It was their first game of the week was really highlighted by Joey's favorite player, Kyrie Irving, hitting probably one of the best game winners I've ever seen in my entire life, hitting a left-handed floater fadeaway from the free throw line, which is kind of insane. And they beat one of the best teams, if not the best team in the Western Conference, the Denver Nuggets. Crazy game, good win for them. And then they followed that up with a close win over the Spurs. They're not a great team, but they got it together for the win. And then they dismantled the Utah Jazz, beating them 113-97. So very good week for the Mavericks, and they look like a scary team in the playoffs.
As much as
Kyrie Irving can dunk.
As much as I hate Kyrie, that was one of the craziest shots I've ever seen. So credit where credit's due. Kyrie, I hated you in Brooklyn and Boston and Cleveland, but you're all right in Dallas. I don't mind you.
Hater.
You're a different
Just a
conference
hater.
now. I suppose I can't hate you. So yeah. Weezo, brother.
All right, for my team of the week, I'm gonna do a team that was undefeated. Actually had the most wins out of the NBA for this last week. It is Joey's very own Boston Celtics. Starting off the week with a pretty convincing win over my own Washington Wizards. Will I ever see a good Washington Wizards team? I don't know, but that's a question for another day. Then 2 wins against the Detroit Pistons, who are not a very good team, but they beat them in pretty convincing fashion. That's about all you can ask for. And then a very good close win against a very good Bucks team with Dame and Giannis. So overall, they did everything you could really ask of them this week, and they're on a good win streak. This is one of the best Celtics teams in recent memory, and they're going to be competing late in the postseason.
Yeah, record wise, I keep seeing the comparisons. They got the same record as the 2008 Boston Celtics. What were they? 55-14 at the same point of the season.
It might be,
Some call it fate, some call it heartbreak, some call it regular season merchants, but I call it faith. Woohoo! Go Celtics.
honestly, this team might be just as good, if not better, than the 08 team, which is crazy to say for me.
If they can figure out how to shut down Jokic in the NBA Finals, they will win the NBA Finals. But the
I
problem
don't
is
think
with
anyone
Nuggets,
has figured out how to shut down Jokic.
the problem is with the Nuggets, you beat them by not shutting down Jokic, but just letting Jokic do his thing and then locking down everyone else because Jokic isn't going to score 100 points.
Yeah, I think the player with the best chance to do that was who we saw last year, Anthony Davis. And Jokic was still able to score and do everything that he normally does with very good defense.
Yeah.
So I just don't think it matters.
No.
I think no matter what, with 23 seconds or 23.9 seconds of amazing defense, Jokic is going to chuck up a shot that looks like this, and it's going to go in every time.
Bros like me for real. Carl knows.
Okay, man.
All right, moving on. Player of the week. My player of the week is also on the same team as my team of the week, and that would being the Houston Rockets. It's a young guy coming into the league. He took a little bit to, get acclimated, which is all right. Some guys need time. No worries. That player is Jalen Green. He's had a phenomenal week, a phenomenal stretch of games, really, during this win streak for the Rockets. Topping it off this week, he only played 2 games. March Madness happening. Less games were being played this week. But starting it off, he had a 42-10-3 against Washington on Thursday. I think it was Thursday. No, Tuesday. And then also, and that was at Washington. And then at home against Washington last week, he had 37-8-2. Could just because it's Washington, who knows? But he's balling. Against Chicago, he had 26-4-3. Another good game. He's shooting the ball efficiently. He's looking good. And then rounding it off with Cleveland, 26-11-4. Jalen Green, he's playing great. Got me a little nervous when he first came into the league, but these young guys on the Rockets with a good coach are now finally starting to develop and take that next step into being a premier player in the NBA. Big Mo?
I love those Rockets, man. I followed them when James Harden was there because he's one of my favorite players in the NBA. But it's love to see that young core. Also with my favorite guy, my twin, Sengun over there. Hope he gets healthy. My player of the week is a guy that is filling in for the shoes of a big NBA star that we are missing right now in Giannis Antetokounmpo. It is Mr. Dame time, Damian Lillard. He started off the week in their win over the Suns, 31 points, 5 rebounds, and 16 assists, which is kind of crazy. Dame knows how to spread the rock around when he's not taking the game-winning shots himself. In their one loss of the week to the Celtics, he still had 32 points, outscoring the Celtics top scorer and Jason Tatum by a point, 4 rebounds, and 6 assists. In their following game against the Nets in a back-to-back, 30 points, 3 rebounds, and another whopping 12 assist game in their win. Damian Lillard's doing his best to keep this team together while Giannis is out. they're already a solid playoff team. Giannis comes back. He's healthy by the time the playoffs start. This could be a very scary East team, but we'll have to see how it shakes out. We don't know how Giannis is going to look fully healthy, but I think Dame can make a good push for the rest of this roster going forward.
I mean, Dame's, he's been great recently. It's been exciting to watch. It's like Dame Lillard that we thought we were going to have the entire season in Milwaukee. But I mean, in terms of be honest, ducking Luke Cornett now, I believe twice is just crazy, dude. I mean, like the Hornet Cornet isn't that crazy on defense. He'll just jump at you from 20 feet away. All right, KP.
Well, I really think he's scared of Derek White on those switches, but yeah.
It's big man Al. he's getting flashbacks from the last playoff game they played against each other.
Yeah. All right. For my player of the week, I've heard of a lot of players in the NBA. I'm kind of a little bit of a casual, gotta admit it, but I do know some names. But I had never heard of Ayo Dosunmu until very recently. He's been a role player on the Bulls for 3 years now, drafted in the second round in 2021. Bulls fans definitely know him, especially recently. He's been on a bit of a tear, first dropping 34 points against Knicks Washington Wizards in a win, shooting 63% from the field and 57% from three. He then followed that up in another win against Portland with 23 points and 10 assists, shooting 53% from the field, 33% from three. And his best performance yet came on Thursday against the Houston Rockets, scoring 35 points off of 72% shooting, unfortunately in a loss, and also shooting 5 for 6 from three, with 3 steals, 2 assists, 2 rebounds. So some pretty incredible games for Ayo.
Is that his nickname, Ayo?
Nope.
I've never heard of him before.
That is his first
That
name.
is his name.
That is his first name.
He was a very good role player for the Bulls last year as well. They considered last year his kind of breakout season, and he's only continuing to build off that. I think he could be a great guard in the league going forward, especially for the Bulls.
Yeah, especially he's really upped his 3-point percentage. Has almost gone up by a full percentage point from he was shooting 31% last year, and he's shooting 40% from three this year. So
there you go. I mean, hey, that's one way to earn more playing time.
Yeah.
Weezo?
All right, so I'm gonna go kind of in the opposite direction of Carl here. You were talking about someone who's I don't want to say unknown, but lesser known in like casual NBA circles, and I'm gonna focus on someone here for my player of the week who's rapidly ascending to the forefront of the NBA picture, and that's gonna be Anthony Edwards of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Simply an amazing week. 230+ scoring performances. 2 wins again, and in his third game of the week, he's dropped 16, but with 13 rebounds, which is crazy to me to see from a guard. It seems like he's able to keep the rebound totals pretty high. And we all know why I'm really picking him for this week. The dunk. He ended John Collins' entire credibility in the NBA in that one move. More than all those years of mid on the Atlanta Hawks, this is going to be his legacy. That man got put into a body bag.
Didn't he get a concussion from that?
Yeah, he actually did get a concussion from that, from slamming the floor so hard.
Dude, Ant couldn't even believe what he did to poor John Collins.
Yeah, but Anthony Edwards, he's really one of the future superstars of the NBA. I mean, I would say he already is. He's becoming a new face of this generation, and I think he's going to do great things in the year to come, and this week is only a prime example of that.
Yeah, I mean, dude, he's a freak of nature, man. To be able to do what he does is just get him in the dunk contest, please. Get him catching bodies.
Anthony,
Put him and John dunk contest.
Anthony
Well,
Edwards
first, well, John
really.
has to, he's got to, like put the guns down, Nick, first. And then maybe he can do the dunk contest. But
Yeah.
sorry, Max.
Hey, let him shoot his shot in the dunk contest though.
No, let's not let that happen.
Oh, wait, no.
happen. Oh, what were you saying, Big Mo? I'm sorry.
I was saying Anthony Edwards really reminds me of what this league was thinking about when we saw a young Jimmy Butler coming into the league with the amount of intensity he brings to the game, to just the way he plays. I think he could make an impact in that sense. And I think maybe if it's not full time with the Timberwolves, like he can make an impact on the line and be on that championship winning team later down the line. But yeah, just a very intensity focused player that I think is going to do great things in this league.
Yeah, I completely agree with Max. I mean, Anthony Edwards, he's extremely underrated on the defensive end. He's very, very good over there, and he talks a lot, which is great for the game. He's not afraid to get into other opponents' heads. Very similar to Jimmy Butler in that way. I think they're different in terms of what they came into the league with, but at this point, I think their skill set's very similar.
Totally agree. Love Ant. He's a great player. All right, now moving on to our worst of the week. My worst of the week, I never really wanted to do a worst of the week about this player because personally, I like him a lot. Even though, he signed with a team that I despise, I liked him a lot. And it's not necessarily about him, but the situation surrounding or involving him, we don't really know yet. And that is Shohei Ohtani and his translators supposedly either stealing money from him or him paying off gambling debt, or Shohei Ohtani having gambling debt and pinning it on his translator as a fall guy. There's a lot of theories going around right now. The MLB is investigating it. They're not going to find anything because it's Shohei Ohtani. This is the face of the league we're talking about. They're not going to find jack. Well, they'll find something, I'm sure. If it makes Shohei look bad, they're not going to say anything about it. Maybe we'll go see Shohei Ohtani play some basketball for a year or two, because that's what his dad always wanted him to do, and then he'll come back. Who knows? But
The Lakers need a center.
Anyway. All right.
Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, it's a bad look for the league if it was Shohei gambling, especially because what they did with the whole Pete Rose thing in gambling, banning him, the guy with the most hits of all time, from entering the Hall of Fame because he bet on himself. I mean, I don't know. It rubs me the wrong way. And if it is true that it was Shohei's gambling debt and he didn't want to look bad and he pinned it on his translator, it's kind of, it makes, in my opinion, it makes Shohei look bad. And if it's his translator, he's paying off his translator against his debt, by all means, hey, Shohei, good job, buddy. That's just being a good friend. I don't think his translator stole money from him, because stealing $4.5 million from someone's bank account is just impossible. I don't see how that ever could have happened without that person knowing about it, at least. But yeah, with that being said, what are you guys' thoughts on this?
Yeah, this rubbed Joey the wrong way, like Pete Rose rubbed that 14-year-old the wrong way.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was about to say.
Okay.
Don't
but
get
if you're saying that,
14-year-olds pregnant, Pete Rose. How about that?
Hey,
and then maybe you'd be in the Hall of Fame.
Carl, if you're saying that, then Karl Malone shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame either.
I also agree.
But he is. Anyway,
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah. Okay. So I think well, it's very bad for Shohei to have his name on the books of like a bookie, an illegal bookie at that. And the number one rule in baseball is you're not allowed to bet on baseball. From what I think, personally, I think it's probably the interpreter that was betting on the games. I just don't like how they came out with the story, and then an hour later came out with a completely different story, painting the translator as the villain who stole money from Shohei. I don't think that's good. And I also don't like how the translator is like doing interviews. Like, get a lawyer, man, please. Don't be speaking out like this. You could go to jail. So
Yeah. Also, there's
please
all
get a
this
lawyer.
now that there's all this false information surrounding things. Like I'm seeing stuff all over social media, like, oh, his translator was lying to him about what he said. He thought he signed with the Dodgers for a number in the 500s, not in the 700 millions. And he thought the Angels didn't even want him, didn't offer him, and all this stuff. I'm like, that none of that's true. Like why? Like all this false information that's being spread about it now is making it the whole situation even worse. I mean, and this is the face of the league we're talking about. I mean, like, if this happened, like, if we knew what we knew about Michael Jordan now when this happened, it was like it would be of the same, like,
Magnitude, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Overall, I think his PR team and his whatever his management team or whatever for Shohei handled this pretty poorly. It's honestly kind of a shame because if this like ends up getting like attached to his name, regardless of if he like actually did like illegal like gambling through like an illegal bookie or not, or if it was the translator, how poorly they've done this is ensured that there's going to be conspiracy theories about this in baseball circles for like the next few decades, which is just a pain to deal with. And it's unfortunate because he's such a good face of baseball. He's such a good competitor. He's a good player, good role model in general. And if he is attached to this, it's kind of a disappointment.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, even if it was the translator betting, I feel like he shouldn't have been betting on Dodger games to begin with, because being that close to
he wasn't betting on baseball. That was just a joke.
According to the article, which I don't know the validity of because the story's been changed like a billion times. He was under an explicit rule to not bet on Dodgers games.
Hey, at least he has got some class then, because gambling's a horrible addiction. At least he had some personal restraint than to not bet on Dodger games.
I mean, in this generation of sports gamblers, Shohei fits right in, man. I mean, he's a great role model.
Yeah, also like with you what you said with the Pete Rose comparison, in his era, sports gambling was much more taboo than what it is today. Obviously, it's illegal in California, but in several other states, it is widely accepted, and in American culture as a whole, I would say now is relatively accepted.
Well, you could say the same thing, Nick, about like like Ortiz took steroids. He's in the Hall of Fame, but Barry Bonds isn't.
Yeah, well,
it doesn't mean steroids are accepted now. It's just
Trend.
Yeah, I would say like say with the Barry Bonds case, the face of the steroid movement, and they had to make an example. And they tried to make an example of him by not putting him in the Hall of Fame.
He also didn't have a good relationship with the writers, period. So he was never going to get in.
Anyway, getting back on topic, so I think it's going to be looked at as a lesser crime than say Pete Rose, because the general fans and everything, they're the ones who are betting on games like that bookie or potentially Shohei was. And as long as it wasn't affecting his on-field play, then I don't see why this won't blow over eventually.
Big Mo, anything before we move on?
Gamble bad.
All right.
Thank you for your inspiring words,
Calvin Ridley set a great example for how to not sports bet.
A man of
no player should be involved in sports betting. If this comes back and like attaches itself to Shohei as a player, I mean, I don't from at least from what I've seen and the minimal baseball I've watched, that doesn't seem like the kind of person Shohei Ohtani is.
Yeah.
I mean, the man collects Pokemon cards, so I don't think he's that bad of a person to have an extreme gambling addiction. So I mean, but hey, we've seen it before. You bring up MJ before, going through his career, and then Calvin Ridley's one of my favorites. All those players that got it in the NFL last season. I mean, it's just like, even though gambling continues to get accepted in more and more states, it's still more and more of a problem for actual athletes, and they should just honestly stay away from it. As enjoyable as it can be sometimes, you already make millions of dollars. There's no really big reason for you to gamble unless you just have a problem. So figure it out. But
going back to what Nick said though, real quick before we move on, about how it's if it doesn't affect his play. Very rarely it will affect the player. Like, because very rarely, Nick, they're betting against each themselves. Most of the time they're betting on themselves or on games that don't even involve them, and they're getting caught sport betting. So most of the time it's not affecting their play. So that's not where the problem is with betting. The problem is
I just think
the implication of it.
Yeah, I just think that especially with baseball, there's always going to be a fear of that, especially with the legacy the 1919 Chicago White Sox have left on the sport. Like, I know it's a long time ago. It was a long.
They were
No, but
bribed by the mob.
they threw the game, or they threw
they threw the World Series.
Yeah, but they were bribed by the mob. It's a completely different situation.
I'm aware, but
and also the players
what I'm
weren't
saying
getting
is
paid
the league
anything.
itself
It's different.
might view it that way.
The players also were getting paid like pennies on the dollar.
No, and it's honestly, I've heard a lot of Shohei's old teammates saying that he doesn't follow any other sports other than baseball, so it wouldn't make any sense for him to bet on sports that aren't baseball.
Right,
and he wasn't betting on baseball, so.
Yeah, so it's probably his translator anyway, and this will all blow over. Translator might lose his job, but that's about the end.
Well, he already did.
Yeah, permanently.
Learn Spanish, buddy. All right, moving on. We're gonna head into our next segment now. It's a new one that we granted because of the time of the month, it's new. We're gonna do a little bit of March Madness talk. We each took a part of the bracket: Midwest, West, South, and East. We're gonna kick it off with Big Mo, who has the South Conference. Big Mo, take it away.
Okay. I don't watch a lot of college basketball, but for the sake of this beautiful podcast that we have and March Madness being March Madness, I watched all of the things throughout this week. I'm gonna start off. I go down the bracket by a bit here. The number 1 seed, Houston in the South, takes care of business against number 16, Longwood. I think the score of that was a hefty 86-46. I mean, they blew them out. It was 40 points. One thing I thought was crazy for Houston was Damian Dunn's 17 points off the bench. I don't really know how much the bench impacts in college basketball, but when you look at someone coming off the bench and scoring about as much as a starter would, that's a pretty good output. Moving on, the number 9 Texas A&M slipped. I would say slipped. I mean, it was like 15 points they won by, but in the March Madness setting, you would call that slipped. By number 8 Nebraska, led by their big 3 in that game of Wade Taylor the 5th, Manny Abaseki, and Tyrese Adford, all had 20 points collectively in their win. After that, number 12, JMU stunned number 5 Wisconsin in a 72-61 win. Big, huge team win. 4 of the JMU starters had double digits in scoring, which I thought was really good for them as a team. They were able to outpace the 5th seed in Wisconsin. And number 4, Duke makes it through in a low-scoring affair against number 13, Vermont. It was I think one of the lowest scoring, if not the lowest scoring game in the South bracket of round 1. Duke only won 64-47, which was a little shaky. But then we have a good one in NC State, knocks off number 6 Texas Tech. Another great bench performance that I would like to point out is Ben Middlebrooks with 21 points off the bench and a very good 75% field goal percentage to help NC State get the win there. Very good showing. And one of the most popular topics in the South this week, number 14, Oakland knocks off a highly favorite in Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky, this happens every year. What's going on, man? What's going on? Stunning shootout. This man, Jack Golke, I think that's how you say it, Golke, turned into prime Steph Curry off the bench with 10 made three-pointers and a 50% three-point percentage off the bench. Let me tell you, people, he only shot threes. He only shot threes. Those were all of his shots. This man took 20 shots. They were all threes, and he made 10 of them to score 32. That is unheard of.
I would like
to.
He only
I'd like
took he only took 8 2-pointers all season, Max.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
But that was insane. Probably the biggest story of the week in the South. But also following that, number 10 Colorado knocks off number 7 Florida with a stunning last-minute jumper to win the game. It was one of my favorite games because it was the highest scoring affair of the first round bracket in the South. With all of Colorado's starters being in the double digits for scoring. I think they're going to make a very big impact in the second round against these guys, number 2 Marquette, who took care of business in their win over number 15 Western Kentucky. But if to a lot of people's notice in the beginning of that game throughout like the first quarter, they were looking very shaky for Marquette coming out the gate. They rally, knock out Western Kentucky. Not a big day for Kentucky basketball fans. But looking to the second round, Big Mo is a man of predictions. And 2 of my favorite predictions is on the realm of Marquette. I think this Colorado 10th seed is a very high-scoring offensive unit. And with the way Marquette came out shaky against Western Kentucky, who was the 15th seed and not crazy on offense, I feel like if Marquette isn't on their guns from the beginning of the game, they could get knocked out by this Colorado team. And it might not come as a surprise seeing their first round performance. With Oakland, I think if that man comes off the bench and did the same thing he did again, we could, if it's a better team effort, we could see NC State to get knocked off. I think that's about a 50-50 shot. Those performances of like 30 points in college basketball don't come crazy often, especially off the bench. I do think Duke will probably take care of James Madison. That could also go 50-50, but I feel like Duke and Houston will be the 2 high seeds that remain going forward in the second round.
Yeah, man, Houston's just a wagon, dude. Their defense is just unreal.
Yeah,
unreal. Like, I thought UConn's defense was good last year. They're just next level. Houston. All right. Yep, that's wraps up the South there, right, Mac? Right, Big Mo?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're gonna kick it over to Weezo now, who's gonna talk to us about the East. Hopefully, he's gonna talk to us more about the entirety of the East and not just UConn. Although UConn's a great basketball program, I love you as being from Connecticut myself. But Nick, let's hear about it.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I'm a lifelong UConn fan, being from Connecticut, and I currently go to UConn as well. So I'm a little bit biased when I say that we completely kicked Stetson's ass. We absolutely destroyed them, dominated them in nearly every aspect of the game. Within like the first 5 minutes of the game, we were already up like 25. I actually started feeling bad for them by the start of the second half, but regardless, we stopped them. 91-52 is the final score. Nearly 40-point loss for Stetson. Quite unfortunate for their first time in the tournament. Too bad, so sad. I feel nothing for you. Anyway, we're winning it all. That's my entire analysis of UConn. Donovan Clingan looked absolutely insane, but that's also because they didn't have a guy that was like a foot, like within the foot of him. So that can't really be analyzed. We'll see next round against Northwestern, against like more of an actual competitive team.
Can I chime in real quick, Nick?
Yeah.
You're comparing UConn. You're bragging about UConn, a basketball powerhouse, beating Stetson. You know what Stetson's known for usually, Nick? Baseball. They're a baseball school.
A win is a win. A win is a win.
It was a 1v5 of Stetson Bennett versus the entire UConn team. What did you think was going to happen?
Listen, a win is a win. I will take what I can get. We have not lost a tournament game in 2 years so far. So we are.
Every reigning champion can say that.
No. Also, we haven't had a tournament game that's been single digits in 2 years. So let's see how that goes against Northwestern, but I think we're going to keep rolling. Anyway, moving on. The aforementioned Northwestern beat the FAU Owls 77-65 in overtime. A pretty close game in the second half. Came down to overtime where Northwestern just started pulling away and dominating. This was a very good FAU team last year. They just couldn't put up the same magic this year out of the same 8 slot. Try again next year. Maybe don't suck in overtime. Anyway, moving on. We have the San Diego State University Aztecs against the UAB. I believe are they the Dragons?
Yeah.
Something.
Sea Dragons.
Really close game, actually. I didn't expect this one to be quite as close. Of course, I had San Diego State winning in my bracket. But San Diego State showed that they are a really good team. UAB also just happened to put up a good fight. Jalen Leedy is legitimate. He is a really good player. I knew he was really good from reputation before, but before watching this game, I hadn't really had the chance to see him play in like a big game. And he put up over 30 points, so he's going to be a threat if he ends up playing another good team like UConn. And in a possible championship rematch in the East. Anyway, next game. Oh man, Auburn, what are you even doing? What is the SEC as a whole doing? You won the SEC final. You talk about how before the game, how you're not going to lose again. You're done losing. And then you go and put up that. You lost to Yale. You lost to an Ivy League school as an SEC team. I would be embarrassed if I was an Auburn fan to show my face for the next month at least. Like, being an Auburn sports fan must be so hard between the Alabama football game earlier this year where they somehow managed to lose a game that I thought was literally unlosable at a certain point. In this game, I don't know what they were doing. They choked over a 10-point lead in the second half. And the whole SEC conference at this point is just fraudulent in basketball. I don't know what was in the water in the SEC this week, but oh my God, they just disappointed on nearly every level. Anyone not named Alabama, get out right now.
You know who would have won that game, Nick? The 3 Big East schools they left out of the bracket.
Yeah. I guarantee you, literally all 3 of them would have won that game. Providence, Seton Hall, they would have all won that.
St. John's was the best one out of all of them.
Yeah, they're good too. Anyway, so moving on from the fraudulent SEC. Also, by the way, CT represent. Good job, Yale. You're probably gonna get knocked off next round, but good fight. Anyway, Duquesne beating BYU 71-77.
Duquesne, Nick.
Duquesne?
Yeah.
I can't pronounce anything.
Hey, to be fair, I only know that because Merrimack played them in the championship for football 2 years in a row.
Duquesne.
I thought they were Duquesne as well.
On paper, looks like a pretty big upset. That is if you're not familiar with BYU sports recently. They find a way to choke it regardless of what sport it is. So I wasn't too shocked. I had picked BYU on my bracket, and that was a sign that things were going wrong at first. Overall, just interesting start to the tournament with one of the first games being an upset, and I think it kind of set the tone for the games to come. Now moving away from the.
I just want to have a quick thing about BYU, that they actually elected to be the 6th seed instead of the 5 seed.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have to play on Sunday if they were to win. So that was just another sign that things did not go well for them. And they could have faced like a weaker UAB team as the 5 seed than Duquesne. So
quick tidbit on Duquesne. Very good football program in the FCS. They won the NEC championship 3 years now. Proceed.
All right, so moving away from the upsets now, some pretty big ones over there. We got Illinois over Morehead State, 85-69. And this game wasn't really too much of a question. Illinois was just the better team. At first, it was decently close in the first half for a bit, but then Illinois just showed their talent and pulled away. They're definitely going to be a big threat out of this East Conference. And I think one of the teams that has the biggest potential to beat UConn, if not like compete with them at least.
Morehead State. Shout out CTESPN.
Oh god. Anyway, then for the last two games, starting off with Washington State over Drake, 66-61. Drake, I think, was actually the projected favorite in this game. So good on Washington State beating the odds despite being the higher seed. Decently close second half. Washington State was able to survive the scare and move on. They're probably going to lose in this next upcoming week, but good on them for getting this far. And then the last game of the East Conference that's already been played, Iowa State over South Dakota State, 82-65. ISU, if you don't know, has probably one of the best defenses in all of college basketball. They are a very, very good team. A lot of people are saying, I know a lot of my UConn buddies were saying that they're very concerned about them being in the same bracket as us because they have the potential of a number one seed. And I mean, we saw that in this game. They just completely shut them down and won by nearly 20. I think they're going to end up beating Washington State probably face off UConn in the climax of the Eastern area. Anyway, for predictions, I know Max had some. Here we go. UConn's going to absolutely pace Northwestern. I saw nothing in that Northwestern game to suggest that we are going to have any struggle. Of course, these words could come back to bite me in the ass, but I'm pretty confident.
Clip it.
Anyway, SDSU versus Yale. SDSU is probably going to win because Jalen Leedy is an insane athlete. Of course, I also thought Auburn was going to beat Yale because obviously they're a better team. But no, I should have considered they're from the SEC. So I think SDSU is probably going to knock off Yale, unfortunately. Then Illinois is going to beat Duquesne. And they're just the better team overall, very deep. And it's going to be Iowa State versus Illinois in that next round. Because Iowa State's going to beat Washington State pretty convincingly.
That would be a big matchup. Iowa State having one of the best defenses in the tournament, Illinois having one of the best offenses in the tournament, and they both can't really play the other side of the ball all that much. So
yeah, that would be must-watch basketball.
Yeah.
Editor, I want how many times Nick mentioned UConn as a tracker on the episode. Just put it in the top corner.
It was prediction
right now.
Listen, we are the standard. We're the number one seed in the tournament. Everyone else has to play through us.
Why are you saying
you on the team?
Why are you saying we? Do you play?
What was that?
Do you play
on the team?
Put me in, coach. I'm
you
ready
failed the tryout, right?
I'll go out there. I'll throw
so it's not we.
Lady if I need to. I'd probably die, but.
All right.
Put him in the paint against Donovan Clingan.
Moving on. KP, you're going to hit us with the Western side of the bracket.
Yeah, this side wasn't as exciting as Max's or Big Mo's side of the bracket over there, but still some very interesting matchups and some interesting games. We saw Wagner have a good performance to win that 16 seed game. Joey's not a big fan. They beat
Let me explain why.
Oh,
in
last
the
year,
NC championship. No, this year.
Oh, they beat you guys this year. Oh,
we won. Okay, so Merrimack just switched D1, right? We're in the NEC. Last year, the NEC is like, you know what? Yeah, let them play in the tournament. Not usually supposed to happen until about 4 years, right? Because there's a transition period. It's a dumb rule because if you win, you win. You should be in. I digress. Merrimack won the NEC championship last year, who then were not able to go to the NCAA tournament, who actually, they would have been the team who played Purdue. What did Purdue do last year? Lost to FDU, the team Merrimack beat.
Regardless, Wagner
this year,
by UNC
they shot
in the first round.
Like 40-something threes after being dog shit from three all year. Shut the hell up, Nick. You talked about UConn for 25 minutes. Give me 2 seconds to talk about Merrimack.
I just like to comment that I had the displeasure of watching the NEC championship game. It happened to be on ESPN.
We're talking about what are we talking about? What are we talking about?
It would have been Merrimack here if
Nobody
they didn't
cares
play.
about Wagner. The NCAA doesn't even have their record listed on their official bracket. Okay? And they lost by almost 30 points to UNC. So
Yeah.
So Wagner, while they had an exciting win in the 16 seed game and over Merrimack, they got smoked by UNC. The game was a little bit close at the start of it, but that seems to happen with every 1 and 2 seed. It seems like most games they start out pretty close in the first 10 minutes or so, and then the better team just smokes them the rest of the way. All right, moving on. We had a Mississippi State against Michigan State. This was the first game of the tournament, and it was interesting. A lot of people had Mississippi State, but Michigan State ended up winning by nearly 20. It was the 8 and 9 seeds are tough to pick, so I understand that, but can't really bet against Izzo this early in the tournament.
That was my bad.
Moving on, probably the most exciting upset of this side of the bracket, we have St. Mary's against Grand Canyon. A lot of people that I know personally had St. Mary's going very far, just because it's St. Mary's, and Grand Canyon really they just play better basketball than them. I mean, looking at the stats. Grand Canyon or both teams couldn't shoot from 3, which is why I don't think Grand Canyon is going to go very far. They both shot under 30% from 3, and but Grand Canyon was able to get really good guard play out of Tyon Grant Foster and Rayshawn Harrison. So they really carried them and helped them on the offensive side of the ball. Moving on, we had Alabama against Charleston. We had the only SEC team to get a win in the bracket thus far, and it was a very, very close game actually. Alabama ended up letting up 96 points, which you honestly don't see very much. There was another game that both teams got into triple digits, but not on the side of the bracket. And Alabama ended up winning though 109 to 96. And they, just a spoiler for one of my predictions, I think Alabama should beat Grand Canyon, as Grand Canyon did not shoot the ball very, very well.
Quick thing about Alabama, they were the #1 offense coming into the postseason, but their defense ranked 109 in the country. So
yeah, it seems like they're gonna.
You can see it in that game.
They may win in the round of 32, but it'll probably be a close game, very high scoring, and they will probably get blown out in the Sweet 16. I'd have to guess. For the next one, a lot of people also had New Mexico over Clemson, but New Mexico got blown out. Clemson dominated for the entire game. New Mexico was trying to fight back, but it was not close. Clemson ended up winning 77-56 and advanced to 32. Moving on, we have Baylor against Colgate. This was also a game that people thought were going to be close. I don't know, this entire side of the bracket, people thought that the lower seed would have a chance, but it didn't really seem to pan out that way. I believe it was Baylor's defense was not very strong, I think, and that's what a lot of people were concerned about. But they ended up winning 92-67, and they're playing Clemson. Should be a good game in Memphis there. Next, we had Dayton against Nevada. Now, this game was extremely interesting. Nevada was the betting favorite over Dayton. Had the lead for most of the game. They were blowing them out. And they proceeded. They were up by 20 points, man. With, I think it was 9 or 8 minutes left. They gave up like 20 unanswered. What are we doing?
I think
What are we doing? Scoring 3 points in the last 10 minutes. What are we doing? What are we doing, Nevada?
And
What
just
are we
when they're
doing?
in, they're out.
I cannot believe it. But moving on, we had Arizona against Long Beach State. Arizona pulled out the victory, and then today pulled out another victory against Dayton. They have advanced to the Sweet 16, and they're looking like a very strong team. So that'll be interesting to watch. So for some more predictions, I already laid out my predictions a little bit. I already said Alabama likely winning over Grand Canyon because of their lack of shooting, but their defense is also very poor, so that should be high scoring. North Carolina, Michigan State. This one's also interesting. UNC did have the worst record of the 1 seeds, and they did look like the least dominant of the 1 seeds as well. So, and Michigan State could be getting hot, but UNC should win. So I'm gonna say UNC gets the win. The Clemson against Baylor is very interesting as well. It's really tough. I think Clemson might pull it out. Just off of like a gut feeling, I think Baylor might not have the defense to keep Clemson away. And then Arizona already beat Dayton, so we'll see.
Yeah, no, that side of the bracket is definitely interesting with some of the teams that you thought were going to be upset staying in there. So you never know what might happen over there. But moving on now to my side of the bracket, the Midwest. We're going to kick it off the first game, Purdue versus Grambling State. Props to Purdue for finally not losing their very first game to a double-seeded team. Or, sorry, not double-seed, double-digit seed. That might change later down the line, being the only seed they haven't lost to in double digits. Was a 14 seed. And you know who's a 14 seed? Oakland. Anyway, all right, moving right along in the Midwest, we got Utah versus TCU. Me personally, looking at the stats, I thought TCU, might be able to pull out a close victory here. And the game was fairly close up until the end where Utah State was able to pull away. Both they were pretty solid teams, but when I was looking at the stats, I like TCU a little bit better because they're better defensively. I didn't feel like in college basketball, defense matters a little bit more than offense. If you look, i.e., look at Houston. They can do it all. They're phenomenal defensively. They're winning games by wide margins. But Utah State was able to pull out the win in a good game by them. Just moving on, we got Gonzaga versus McNeese. Now, Gonzaga, this is their first NCAA game post Drew Timme era. I wasn't even really expecting to make the tournament because they ran their offense through Drew Timme for 3-4 years. But they made it. They're a solid team. They looked pretty good in their first. What?
Didn't they have a?
They Chet for a year.
Yeah, but Drew Timme was still a very big part of that offense, Nick. And it was their first year without him, so I wasn't sure how they were going to do. And they're looking good. They're down by 1 against Kentucky right now. I'll get to that later. But yeah, post Drew Timme era, they're looking all right. And then moving on to Kansas in a controversial game, probably the best game on this side of the bracket. Kansas should have lost to Stanford. The refs messed up big time with that block that they called a foul. That might have been the cleanest block I've ever seen in college basketball because there's contact on almost every single block. There was nothing on that. There was nothing. It was the perfect block, textbook, and they call a foul. You cannot do that, especially when the 13 seed is about to beat the 4 seed. It's just it's painful.
It's not a professional. It's not professional. So
yeah, it's painful. Just to see a team like Stanford who worked their ass off that entire game to stay in it against a very good Kansas team and to end up losing at the end to a call like that. It hurts. It hurts. I also, now that I addressed the top couple teams here, I nicknamed my part of the bracket the choker schools. Because you always have the teams that choke in the first or second rounds, and they'll be the best team in the league, and then they'll just choke, aka Kansas, Gonzaga, Purdue, and Creighton too a little bit sometimes. But we'll get there when we get there. South Carolina, Oregon. I thought South Carolina was going to run the table with Oregon. I did not think they were that good of a team. Boy, was I wrong. First of all, Jermaine, I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce your last name. Jermaine Jermaine, heck of a game, dropping 40 points. I didn't even think that was possible in college basketball. I've been watching it for a long time. I love the March Madness. I love college basketball. 40 points is just crazy. That's just crazy. I mean, props to him. And then you got your center dropping 23 and your other guard dropping 11. I mean, granted, nobody else on the team really scored any points, but that's three really high scoring players, the really high scoring games from three players that you don't see in college basketball. So that was very exciting. And just seeing Oregon blow out South Carolina, I was here for it. I had South Carolina winning in my brackets, but I like Oregon as a school. I think they should have been seated a little bit higher than they were. But yeah, they could be an interesting team down the line if that card stays hot, if Jermaine stays hot.
Yeah, Oregon was actually the favorite.
Were it really?
Yeah,
they were.
I did not look at the betting odds for that game because I don't like betting on college basketball because I am always wrong. Moving on, Creighton versus Akron. I know I saw a lot of people saying Akron would win because they were for some reason, the Big East was being very much disrespected by the vast majority of people. But
and
Creighton,
who was born in Akron?
LeBron,
my glorious
King.
I think Curry was also born in Akron.
No comment.
Anyway, Creighton,
Irrelevant.
what all Big East basketball fans knew they could do, they did, winning by 17 in a very good game. Creighton is a very good basketball team. They could be making a run down the line, but we'll have to wait and see. Moving on, we got Texas versus Colorado State. I had no doubt in my mind Texas would win this game. Texas is a good basketball team, ranked 7 in the Midwest. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if they should have been higher or lower. But granted, they played a first 4 team, so that's usually you're going to benefit from by winning that. So it is what it is. Moving on, Tennessee and St. Peter's. Because of St. Peter's run last year, they thought that they could upset Tennessee. In my opinion, Tennessee deserved to be a 1 seed over UNC, maybe over Purdue after that. Seeing Purdue lose before the Big Ten championship. But Tennessee is a very good basketball team on both sides of the floor, and you can tell that in this game. Allowing 49 points in college basketball is just crazy, for starters. No one else is able to do that defensively this year. Except for Houston and Texas, but Texas, they only put up 56 points, so ignore that. And then Tennessee comes out and scored 83. That's not a crazy high number, but 83 is a lot of points. That's a big point differential. Tennessee's a very good basketball team. I have them going to the Final Four, if not the championship. We'll just wait and see. Moving on, I'll do my predictions now. I have Tennessee beating Texas handily. Dalton Connect is a very good basketball player, one of the best in the country, and I think you see that in this game. Now, this next game by no means is a lock. Creighton versus Oregon, number 3 versus 11. On paper, looks like a lock. Definitely not a lock after seeing how Oregon played the game before. But I think Creighton does pull it out in a closer game, just because all around, as a basketball team, all around they're better. But Oregon has a good basketball team too. Offensively, they can score a lot of points. Continuing up, we got the game going on right now: Kansas and Gonzaga. Going into half, Kansas is up by 1, 44-43. I honestly, I don't know who's going to win this game because they're very identical teams. They both play the same kind of ball. But with that being said, I think Gonzaga pulls it out because I think Gonzaga is just a little bit better in those close game situations historically. Although Kansas, they have won a championship recently, but that was 4 years ago. Gonzaga is a little bit better of a team, I think, right now. I think they should have been ranked at the 4 and Kansas the 5, but I'm not part of the committee, so I don't get a pick, unfortunately. And moving on to our last game, we got Purdue versus Utah. I think Purdue handles them with ease. I don't see many teams beating Purdue because Zach Edey is just He's good at the game, man. I don't know what to tell you. But then again, Zeki also gets called for a lot of gifted a lot of free throws that he should not be getting in college basketball. It's a little bit more physical than the NBA, and sometimes he gets a little bit more of the NBA foul calls down low, which, best player in college basketball right now, arguably. So I understand he's going to get calls, but I don't think he should get as many as he gets. But that's just me. But yeah, that's my predictions. I got Purdue, Gonzaga, Creighton, and Tennessee heading into the Sweet 16. All right, and now we're going to move on to the man who needs no introduction, shaking his finger at me for I don't know why. I'm sure he'll tell me later. But you know him, you love him. It's time for Big Mo's Hot Zone Hot Take of the Week, brought to you by Zone and Podcast.
Big Mo. My finger wagging in short. It's because Joey's take on Tennessee is wrong. Texas is actually going to win because Bijan Robinson said so, and that's what's going to happen.
Well, Bijan Robinson doesn't have a perfect bracket anymore, Max.
Texas is going to move on. But for today's hot take of the week, I'm going to have a great conversation, especially with my main man, KP, over here, because we are going to talk about ridiculously early NFL playoff teams. And that's one in particular that I think is going to be the very own Chicago Bears. And let me tell you why. Let's take a look at the outlook of this offense. We know who's the number one pick. We know who it's locked. We know it's locked in. Justin Fields is out the door. Enter the Caleb Williams era in Chicago. We're here. It's coming. All we have to do is wait a little bit more until April, about a month exactly from now. We'll be seeing his name called on a Thursday night. Caleb Williams, DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Tyler Scott, Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, PFF's early ranking for the Chicago Bears offensive line going into this season. Number 11, with no upgrades made so far. Number 11. They still have that 9th pick that I believe can be used on another offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, a corner possibly in my eyes. But let's talk about that defense. Montez Sweat. They picked up Jacob Martin, who I do think can be a starter for them off the edge. Gervon Dexter Jr., who made a good push last year at nose tackle. TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds, Mr. Sanborn, Jalen Johnson, the man that just got paid, Tyreek Stevenson, who we thought was not going to make a roster last year, but he did, and he showed out. Kyler Gordon, who's kind of trash, but he's there. And then we have Jaquan Brisker and the newly added Philadelphia Eagle Kevin Byard. I mean, come on. You look at this team, healthy. I see them taking where the Packers were last year as a possible first-round exit to a team that potentially knocks off a team in round 2. I think this Bears team can do it. Yes, it's difficult to say that led by a rookie QB that a team can instantly make the playoffs, but we're talking about Caleb Williams. We're talking about the man that's being comped to the man, the myth, the legend, Patrick Mahomes, that's won 3 Super Bowls. So call me a hater early on, but I'm a supporter in this scenario. I want the Bears fans to have something to be happy about. I want them to make the playoffs. Why? Because I think Carl can agree with me. Screw the Packers. And we need someone to contest with the Lions. And I think this team can do it. What do you think? What are your thoughts, man? Tell me what's going on, man.
Hey, Pete, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll start it off. Just a little yap session quickly. So I know at pick 9, a lot of people are thinking maybe edge, maybe corner, maybe tackle. But in my mind, I think an underrated pick there would be Jackson Powers Johnson. Hear me out. I think they need a center, and he is probably the best interior line prospect since Quentin Nelson. I think one of the most underrated connections and Max can hold me to this. One of the most underrated connections in football is the center and quarterback connection. And if you can get a good relationship between the center and the quarterback, especially if the center is a super high level talent, high level prospect, then it just makes your team and your offense that much better. And I think Jackson Powers Johnson could be awesome. I don't care if it's a reach. I really don't. I even think maybe taking Dallas Turner, if he's available at 9, might be a little bit of a reach just because of needs and stuff like that. But I mean, I don't know, man. I don't think they need tackle. I think the projected 11th ranked offensive line makes sense. I think their tackle room is pretty good. They've invested a lot into it. Obviously, they've invested a lot into their receiver room. They're paying them handsomely because you know why? They have reset their window. They are now, instead of on a 2-year window, it is now a 5-year window with Caleb Williams and with that 5th-year option. So, I mean, they do look to be in a really good spot, and Caleb Williams probably has the highest expectations of a rookie quarterback that we've seen in a very long time.
I think too, with the consideration of the 9th pick, just going off of that, I think there is a lot of teams that we want to see that want to trade higher than number 9. But I could honestly see the Bears. I looked at their draft picks going into this. After their first, the next is a 3rd. They don't have a 2nd anymore. They don't have much after that. So I could even see them trading down to take someone like Jackson Powers and maybe regain a 2nd-round pick from another team and maybe some mid-round picks to maybe pick up that 3rd receiver to maybe not play Tyler Scott in that slot role, or, like one of those mid-round corners to take Kyler Gordon out of a slot spot, or a nickel. I could see that happening. And, a long time ago, the Bears made it to the playoffs with a good team surrounding Mitchell Trubisky of all quarterbacks. I think this is a scenario where the team is surrounding Caleb, but Caleb is a much better quarterback. So I feel like they could push much farther than a 1st-round exit, especially in an NFC that we're seeing slowly rebuild in power, but still a lot of the talent is still, even in this free agency, moving over to the AFC conference. So I feel like this could be a real shot for the Bears. Joey, Wesso, take your time. What do you guys think?
I do agree with you and Carl that the center quarterback connection is not something that is often talked about. I did play one game of JV quarterback where we only went under center. I understand the connection is very powerful, but anyway, yeah, I do. I like the Jackson Powers Johnson pick for them. I don't know if they take him at 9. I think they're more likely to trade back, maybe try to get a 1st and a 2nd, and then draft him in like somewhere in the teens. We'll see. But yeah, in terms of the Caleb Williams might be coming into the best situation possible we've ever seen a rookie quarterback come into, or a 1st-round pick at least come into. I mean, let's look at the offense. What he's got, in terms of passing weapons, who's he got? He's got Keenan Allen, dog. He's got DJ Moore, dog. Cole Kmet, dog. Then you look at the defense. That defense is good. Jalen Johnson's one of the premier corners in the league, and he's on the uprise. They got a lot of young guys, offensively and defensively, that are just getting better and better every year. So I think, potentially we could see a playoff run. If the Lions can't repeat their magic, maybe they take the division. Who knows? The Lions, I wouldn't say they got worse, but they definitely didn't get better. I think they stayed the same. But the Bears took a big step forward, assuming Caleb Williams is what we think he's going to be. I'm no fortune teller. I don't know what he's going to do, but he's in a great situation to do something great. So I do agree. I think that the Bears could be a playoff team next year. I think that could very well be a possibility.
Honestly, I think the NFC North is going to be probably the most interesting division to watch next year. Because with Caleb Williams going to the Bears, because he is, that team is now very competitive on the offensive side of the football, and with a few more additions on the defensive side, they could be pretty competitive on there too. Add that to that young Green Bay Packers team that now has a taste for playoff victory, and that Lions team who made it all the way to the conference championship. And add in the likely possibility that the Vikings are going to be trading up for a prestige quarterback in the draft this year. It creates a situation where these four very young, very hungry teams all trying to vie for supremacy. And I think it's going to be probably the most entertaining division to watch in the NFL. I think the Bears are going to do good. I think they're going to improve by 2 or 3 games this year. Nothing too drastic, especially considering how competitive the division might get with all the introduction of these new quarterbacks and talents. Um, but I think they are going to improve with him under center, and I think that Bears fans, despite all their incessant complaining about it, are going to be grateful in the long run for having a quarterback as good as him and for having this window open. Despite how much they wanted to keep Justin Fields for God knows what reason.
If Caleb Williams is a quarterback you think he is, I think he could get that contract extension offer like next offseason, which would be
I
kind of
don't
great.
think you can do that in football. I'm pretty
You
sure
can't?
you
I
have
don't.
to, you
That's a
have to wait.
baseball thing.
I
I
think,
thought they did
yeah.
that with Mahomes before his rookie
Mahomes
contract.
got that after
Was
his
it year 4?
Yeah, it was after year 3, I believe you can offer
Yeah,
a
it's after year
contract.
3 or 4, something like
Yeah.
So
Tragic.
on the realms of this of what Nick said of this team being one of the most competitive in the NFC, I'll have you know, listing out all of the records. The Lions were in the lead with 12-5. The Packers were 9-6. The Vikings were 7-10 without Kirk Cousins, and a very questionable defense that Brian Flores seemingly fixed with not much. And the Bears, with Justin Fields in and out, not a strong quarterback under center, we're also 7-10. So this is a very competitive division. You slot somebody in, maybe a JJ McCarthy for the Vikings to take place for Kirk Cousins with Jettas. That's a very good situation for him too. TJ Hawkinson. That's probably the second best situation for a first round quarterback going in, other than Caleb, if that actually plays out and they do take JJ McCarthy. And the Packers still have Jordan Love in an efficient offense. So you could see all these teams make a shot at the wild card, and it'll be a really strong toss of like, I feel like this is one of the divisions where these divisional games will be the ones to watch on these, these Thursday night games, these Sunday games, like these late in the season. These will be the deciders. This division will have the most deciders out of any division,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I know we've talked about Shane Waldron a decent bit on this podcast. I know Nick is not very fond of him. Okay, we're not going to get into Nick's rant about him, but I think he was probably one of the best offensive coordinators available for developing a young quarterback. I mean, we saw he was the offensive coordinator in Seattle that completely turned around Geno Smith's career. And he made Russ look very good. Listen, he's probably not great for the Bears' potential run game down the line, but does it matter? I mean, if you're going to make Caleb Williams into a top 10 quarterback, I don't think it matters.
I will say
Also,
this:
like the running back's not. It's not like they got a premier running back like Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, they have a great running back by committee, but you're right. Yeah. No Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, exactly. I will say that the addition of DeAndre Swift for them is one that I really liked because I think he'll go really well with Waldron's pass-heavy scheme out of the backfield, catching passes for Caleb Williams. That'll be a very nice safety valve for him. That's going to be very underrated. It's really important to have a safety valve for these quarterbacks to kind of fall back upon when things are breaking down. And with Williams' escapability, I think that's going to have a big impact.
I think that role would be filled more by like Cole Kmet. Safe tight ends tend to be safety valve.
I think it's Khalil Herbert. I think Khalil Herbert is the guy out of the backfield. I love Khalil Herbert. I loved him coming out of college, and I think that he's probably the best pass catching option. Him or Roschon, they're both pretty well rounded in terms of catching the ball. And even though Caleb Williams didn't check down much last year, he was playing a bit of hero ball because he kind of had to. I mean, that didn't have a lot of talent around him, but we saw his Heisman season. Was not afraid to check down at all.
Well, it wasn't even that he didn't have talent around him, Carl. Is that he had the worst defensive-minded head coach in the entire college football. kind of do in college football. Lincoln Riley only thinks about offense and he doesn't even bother looking at the defense.
No, I just meant their
score 50 points
offense
a
in
game,
general
gotta
is horrendous. One of the worst O lines I'd say in
Oh, yeah.
college football and out of Power 5 teams. And even though they have somebody who's probably going to get picked in this draft, Brendan Rice, their receiving core not good. They did not create separation against
Great
them
running
in
back.
coverage specifically. Yeah,
Marshall
their running
Lloyd.
backs look good though. Yeah,
Maybe
was it
Marshall Lloyd
Lloyd?
goes to Chicago.
I think they have such a stacked running back room.
Yeah,
I
they
think they're
really
good.
don't need. That's the last of their needs.
Yeah.
It was a joke. All right, moving on. Next segment. If no one has anything else to add.
Yeah.
No?
Well, I'll just quickly. No, about Max. Max was talking about them potentially moving down. I think they definitely could. You could see a team trying to move up for. I'd say if one of the top 3 receivers falls 2-9, I think you could see a Bears trade down and pick up a second-round pick. Or we could also see. I mean, if a quarterback tends to slide, that could also be a possibility. But I think a tackle as well. There's a lot of tackle needy teams, and this is a very strong tackle class. So, that'd be big.
Yeah, definitely. All right, now we're going to move on to our next segment. This is also a new segment. I don't really know what to name it. I don't got a cool name for it. So we're just going to call it our prospect study. Each week we're going to pick a different a different position group. This week we did skill positions outside of quarterback. So running back, wide receiver, tight end. I don't think any of us chose the tight ends. Frankly, there's maybe 1 or 2 really good tight ends in the draft, Brock Bowers and then Sanders out of Texas. And they're not really, they get a lot of attention as is. We want to go into guys who don't get a lot of attention. So I'll kick us off. I took a guy who's been climbing up people's boards lately for maybe a high second round or mid to high second round pick. And that is Xavier Legette. For my player comps for him out of current NFL players, 2 very common ones where if you would know his game, it's AJ Brown and DK Metcalf. Guys who can take that 50-50 ball and turn it into a 70-30 ball. What I've learned from watching his film and looking at other people's scouting reports on him, he's a jump ball merchant. He's amazing at it. He is really smooth and fluid when he's cutting in and out, like breaking in and out on routes. What he's best at is the deep ball, running vertical routes with just a quick single cut, getting that separation, getting open there. And then, he's got a quick burst. He's great at timing, especially with those jump balls. And to top that all off, he's a phenomenal blocker. What I don't like about him is I think he has a poor release off the line and his footwork needs some work. But you can teach those 2 things, especially at the NFL level. If you have a good wide receivers coach, that's something that can be fixed very quickly. And then he's also poor against tight man coverage, like press or just a closer man coverage. But I think that once again, Carl and I were talking about this before the podcast, getting better against a press man coverage it will come naturally to him once he gets better footwork and better release. And that being said, I'll go over his combines and I'll tell you where I think he fits best in the NFL. My top 3 teams. Combine time, pretty fast time. He ran a 4.39. That's really good. 10-yard split was 1.54, also good. Vertical jump, 40 inches. Makes sense. Jump ball receiver, he's going to have a high vert. And then broad jump was 10 feet, 6 inches. That's also really good. He's a tall, big receiver. I think he can fit a lot of places. When I watch his game, I do really see AJ Brown and DK. My top 3 fits go as follows. I think he fits best personally. We don't know what New England's new system is going to be, but I think he will fit best in there with a team that's looking for a star type value wide receiver that's in the second rounds, simply because, they're going to go for quarterback first rounds. Everyone knows they're going to quarterback first rounds. So therefore, Patriots are looking for a receiver second round. Lad McConkey might not be there. Xavier Legette is. I'm fine with either. Then moving on, I think you also you'd see the Giants take them if they do draft JJ McCarthy first round and the Vikings can't get up to 4. I think you see the Giants taking him there in their second round pick because I believe it's on the higher side. I think he'll be on the board for them. I could see him fit very well there. A team who's desperate need of a wide receiver with that breakout talent. And then lastly, It's a team that just loves to throw the ball deep. They're already a good team, good playoff team. Didn't do much this offseason, but man, they love slinging the rock deep, and that is the Dallas Cowboys. I think pairing Xavier Leggett up with a premier wide receiver like CeeDee Lamb would just one be phenomenal for his development, and two, it could be a deadly combo. We might be looking at it if he goes to the Cowboys. We'd be looking at a Waddle Hill type receiving core, in my opinion, in terms of big playability. Any thoughts real quick before we bounce to the next one? No? All right, Big Mo, let's hear yours.
Oh, this is the best one to start with. Wide receivers, man. My boy, my son, my man I watched for a while now. I watched him grow. I watched him become one of the most underrated receivers in this draft. It is Georgia wide receiver Ladd McConkey. 6 foot, 186 pounds. His combine ran a astonishing, surprising to most people, 4.39 official 40-yard dash with a 1.52 10-yard split, 36 vert, 10.4 broad jump, and a lackluster 13 reps on the bench. He's not the strongest receiver. But Ladd McConkey, I got to be honest with you, his strengths from what I've watched on his tape, and, I'm a big Georgia fan. I've watched the games. I've seen he's been dealing with the past few seasons. He's had injuries. He's had knee problems. He's had, I think it might have been back, or no, it might have been something else. But he had a few injuries that slowed his production down a lot this past season going into the NFL draft. But I find his strengths to be difficult. It's difficult for defenders to keep him uncovered due to his route running ability. He has a strong route running ability. I would even call it rhythmic route runner. That his footwork is very crisp and he keeps his routes under the pads very nicely. He's consistently able to manipulate corners to relinquish their leverage. He gets tested a lot. He gets doubted a lot. And I feel like he has the speed and vertical speed and separation to keep the coverage honest. A lot of DBs in the SEC didn't cover him honestly, and he was able to slip by and get into those open coverages that are very easy for a QB to get the ball into. He's a very natural hands catcher and loves to pluck the ball away. You could throw a bad ball. He was plucking it out of the air and bringing it into his body perfectly. He's got glue on his hands, people. He is a catcher. He is one of the best catchers in this draft. But there's a part of his game that not a lot of people pay attention to and that can make him a good asset for teams. He is a slippery punt returner, and he's got vision of a running back on the field. I've seen very little vision from some receivers that have been drafted. Ladd McConkey has one of the best visions on the field for a receiver, and the man is a film junkie. Through all of his interviews, he is one of the biggest wide receivers on focusing on not only his own film, but the opponent's DB's film that he watches. He studies his opponents. He studies the DBs he is going to play, and he is going to find a way to get open. His weaknesses, he's not that strong. We talk about the bench press. That's an indicator of it. He is going to have probably a lot of trouble with press coverage if it is presented to him. But that is something that can be improved upon. He can get in the weight room. He could get his strength up. But I'm hoping he can make up for that with his speed and his separation ability. He's not the best deep ball guy, so I don't see him being very strong in an offense that relies on that from a receiver. And he has a bit of average acceleration through his route stems. But those are just my thoughts on it. I have his projection to be in the early second round. I see this man falling no further than the early third if a lot of teams pass on him. I find his archetype to be a high upside slot receiver, a team that they could lock in at 2 and 3. his NFL comps actually going on both of their college tape. I have him very similar to wide receiver from the Commanders, Diami Brown. They had very similar play styles in college, though Diami Brown hasn't had a lot of boost with the Commanders yet. They have a very similar play style in both their separation and catching ability. And another one that I saw that I didn't really like based off of his NFL career so far was Deontay Johnson. Um, Not the craziest similarity, but you could see some similarities there. Um, and the best fits, I do have Lad McConkey being his best version of himself, paired with a number one receiver that is the greatest in the NFL at their position, or one of the greatest. So I have the Titans just brought in a guy like Calvin Ridley. I see him pairing up with Calvin Ridley as maybe a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. Well, the Raiders just let Hunter Renfrow walk with Devontae Adams. I could see McConkey coming in, being a number 2, number 3 there. And there are some rumors that Stephon Diggs could be out the door of Buffalo in a trade. There have been rumors, but I thought if he stayed, he would be a great addition to that wide receiver core with Stephon Diggs. I mean, Carl's talked about Khalil Shakir before. We like him a bit, but we don't really know if he can be that number 2 guy. And I think Lad McConkey could step into that offense and fit with Josh Allen pretty well. Kind of like what Cole Beasley did during the COVID era there.
Yeah, I like Lad a lot. Obviously, I want him in New England, but I don't. Having your number one option being a slot receiver is probably not the best, especially for a rookie slot receiver. But I mean, if Belichick was still there, he would definitely fit the Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, Danny Amendola type receiver. And I see a lot of similarities in their game. But I could also see him being like a Cooper Kupp kind of guy, you know, getting down and dirty, doing the work that no one expects you to do.
All right, for the Bills, in terms of fits, I think that they probably want a similar type of receiver to Gabe Davis, but maybe with a slightly higher ceiling. So more of a vertical threat. And then to fill in Khalil Shakir in the slot, I think that would be great for their offense. So they might even target Xavier Legette in the second round if he's there, or just a deep threat. There seems to be a ton of them this draft. So that might be better for them than getting like a separator. And I think Lad McConkey is a top 5 separator in the entire draft, and probably the best coming out of the slot. I think a good comp, in my opinion, Mac's comps were also great. Would honestly be a Jerry Jeudy. I think Jerry Jeudy, an elite separator, but he's so weak that he cannot produce in the NFL. His hands are probably not as good as Lad as well, but I just think that they are similar. They're similar types of prospects, and it also shows where Jerry Jeudy would go if he was drafted this year. Yes, people are not as high on just separators that can do nothing else.
Yeah, agree. All right, moving on. Weezo, why don't you give us our prospects or your prospect?
Right. So for my prospect, I'm gonna cover Troy Franklin, wide receiver out of Oregon. He's a junior with a lot of upside. Over 1,300 receiving yards last year. I believe that was third in the entire NCAA. 6'3", 187 pounds, so decently good height for a receiver. One of the biggest draws for him, I think, is his age. He's only 21.1 years old, which means he's 1 month of being 21. So he's gonna stay 21 for like the next season or so, which means he has a lot of years, a lot of youth to give to a team. For his combine stats, some things that really stood out to me: 4.41, 40-yard dash, which not the best, but it's still decent. He can still blow by some defenders. And a 39-inch vertical. One thing that's important about that though, he did not do the bench press, and that's one of the concerns I'm going to address later about his strength as a receiver. But overall, he ranked 19th in athleticism for the wide receiver position out of PFF, which is part of the reason I think that his draft stock has fallen a little bit. But I think he still could provide a decent wide receiver 2 eventually for a team. For best team fits for him, I'm going to say the Kansas City Chiefs are a very good option for him. Patrick Mahomes loves to spread the ball around to receivers who can make space. He's very good at deep route running, and he could potentially break some with a quarterback that can really throw it deep like Mahomes. They recently picked up Hollywood Brown, and they have Rashee Rice, obviously, but I think he could pair well with them, especially with those two taking some attention. It really depends on how far he falls in the draft. If he falls to late second round, I think I could see the Chiefs picking him up. Um, so that lower stock might actually make him able to get to better teams that are more beneficial for his development. If not Kansas City, you might see another team that's really in need of young playmakers, like say the Carolina Panthers take it. I don't know if that would be as good for his development, but they might be desperate enough to take just whatever wide receivers on the board. I could also see the Buffalo Bills trying to take him as a wide receiver 2 option to replace Gabe Davis, as Franklin can stretch the field. And overall, just high teams with good quarterbacks, set quarterback positions are better for him, like say Allen and the Chiefs. And if he doesn't go to a team with a decent quarterback, I think he might be in a bit of trouble.
I'm sorry.
What was that?
I was just gonna say just one thing about the bench press. I know a lot of receivers don't really participate in it because it doesn't really help them. It only kind of raises more questions.
Yeah, but with his already existing concerns about his strength, I think that it just only adds to the fire of that concern.
Well, I mean, if he went out there and got like 1 rep, I feel like the concerns would be a lot more.
Yeah, but
I'm not too concerned about one specific strength exercise for your chest. I mean, I think it matters a lot more for offensive linemen who are pushing their opponents back.
That's true.
But even then, you're driving with your legs.
Yeah. So for his NFL comparison, at the higher end, obviously, I would say he's pretty similar to Chris Olave. Someone who can run really good deep routes, has decent speed, can catch it pretty decently. And he's most likely going to be a wide receiver too. He's not like a number 1 option. That's why he's going to fall decently far into the second round. He's not going to be taken in the first round like I once thought in my mock draft. But overall, he's still pretty good. I know some unnamed NFC scouting director said that he's pretty similar to Jalen Hyatt, but on the Giants, but a bit less explosive. Obviously, he's not quite as fast as Hyatt is. But he has better route running than Hyatt is what their comment was. So I think that's kind of on the lower end of it. I mean, obviously Jaden Hyatt's pretty good, but we haven't seen a lot out of him because he wasn't used to the extent he could be in the Giants game plan. But that's generally his comparisons. Obviously he could fall to a little below what Jalen Hyatt is right now at his absolute lowest, but he still has some decent talent, so I don't think that will happen. For like what specifically I like and don't like about his game, the pros and cons. He's pretty good after the catch, an explosive playmaker with the ball in his hands once he gets it. He can get by some corners with his speed. He's no Xavier Worthy, Tyreek Hill type, but he can still manage to get around some defenders and get some separation in the deep ball. He can jump high to get to the ball. It's just a question of whether he can push them away, the defender, to get there. Which brings me to his cons. He definitely needs to get stronger. Like I think it was Joey who said it, you can kind of improve that in the NFL with like strength training and like working out a lot. But he definitely needs to improve upon that to be able to win those one-on-one balls if he wants to be a premier receiver in the league. Another thing that's probably one of the largest concerns for me is some inconsistency tracking the ball in his time at Oregon. That's something that needs to be addressed right away because if you're a deep threat receiver like he is and you can't track the ball super well, then that's going to be a very, very major concern. That's going to have you looking like Kadarius Toney out there. I mean, Kadarius Toney couldn't catch anyway, but I mean, he's just really not a jump ball guy, and he gets really little separation at the short and intermediate levels. He's really good on the deep ball. We saw that at Oregon, but in the short and intermediate route running, he was just kind of average. Not super great, nothing too bad, but we could see some improvement there.
One of my big gripes just with the Oregon offense in general, I'm trying to see if I can find it, but PFF had it blocked just because I don't have the PFF Plus. They run a crap ton of screens, so it makes guys like Bo Nix look a lot better than they are because it kind of takes. I mean, Bo Nix is a good quarterback, I think, but it kind of takes away that a lot of what like decision making stuff like that when they run screens. But I don't know if Troy Franklin was involved in any of them because I can't see it.
No, I think that's more similar to what their offense was like with Justin Herbert. With Knicks last year, it was much more vertical offense. That's why Trent Franklin was able to put up a lot of yards. Their offense changed quite a bit, but in different ways, it still doesn't show Bo Nix entirely. So I think that raised concerns about him. But I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Troy Franklin. I think his strengths play into, or his weaknesses play into his strengths too much. Like if you're a deep ball receiver, you should be able to track the ball. Like that was the one thing about Jalen Hyatt is that was his one thing, and he's elite at that one thing. I don't think, aside from his release I think he has elite footwork, and I think that's the only part of Troy Franklin's game that's truly elite. And that's really what you're looking for. Listen, you can teach footwork. You really can't teach somebody how to track the ball. That's like just eyesight and just feel for the game more than anything. And I think he's too weak. I don't think he'd really. I'm just not a big fan of him. Really much at all.
Yeah, I think he could fall into the early third round at the latest, but at that point, I think he could be kind of a decent pickup for a team. I think he's going to be a bit of a project wide receiver. There's a lot of holes to improve, but I think if the right team gets him, he can become something in the future. He might not be an immediate impact, but I think down the line he could be.
No, it's tough because you see a lot of receivers that are small, but they don't play small. But Troy Franklin plays smaller than he actually is. Like if you see somebody like CeeDee Lamb came into the league at like $170, it looked like he looked small. But I mean, he gained some muscle, but he didn't play small. Like you see, I don't know, you just don't see what you'd like from Troy Franklin and the type of receiver he's supposed to be.
Yeah, at
What
6'3",
would you,
you'd expect him to go up there and get it, but he just can't.
What vet would you compare him to, Carl?
I'd say like an end of career Ted Ginn Jr.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's crazy.
I don't know why.
Like,
When
that's
I
how he
only
plays.
I only watched one Oregon game because I was watching film for Bo Nix and Troy Franklin, and I kept looking at him. And I kept thinking Devontae Parker. I don't know why.
Well, I mean, I think he's a bit of a better Devontae Parker's been last in the year,
Miami Devontae.
He's been last in the league in separation the last 4 years. So I think he's a little better of a separator than that.
Yeah, well, that's why I said Miami Devontae. Like
no,
the one that you
on Miami, he was last. His last 2 years in Miami, he was last in separation. Yeah, he just had a crazy good hand, so he still put up decent stats.
All right, we're gonna move on now to Carl's player. Carl, take it away.
All right, so for my player, I went somebody that might not get picked in the first 2 days of the draft. I picked Isaac Guerendo out of Louisville. So he started at Wisconsin, played his first 4 years there, and then transferred to Louisville for the 5th year. He is probably the best running back in the draft when it comes to the outside zone, which is really important in an NFL offense, especially in like a Shanahan type system. I think he also at the combine he ran a 4.33, which is crazy, especially for a running back at 220 pounds. Um, I looked at his draft profile on NFL.com, and it didn't really sound like him all that much. The whatever analyst it was said he didn't really use his speed, but in the GPS that they have on the players in college football, he hit over 20 miles per hour. So I think here we're looking at a Devin A-Chain type of weapon that you can use on the offensive end of the ball, and he also doesn't have that much mileage. So only 231 college carries. So you could see, I think in that way he's similar to Raheem Mostert, somebody very explosive that wasn't used that much and was able to have success late in their career. But obviously, it's a different situation here. I think he has super quick feet. He's a very good one cut type of back, and he's able to change direction very quickly. And he played with Jonathan Taylor, and he is probably faster than Jonathan Taylor, which is kind of crazy to say, or at least very similar speed. And I think some of his best fits. I mean, I already mentioned the Shanahan style offense, just teams that run a lot of outside zone. A lot of teams with the Shanahan, or a lot of teams with coaches under the Shanahan tree already have very good one cut backs. Like you see, Raheem Morris is part of that, and he has Bijan Robinson. So obviously, you don't need to draft a guy like Garendo because Robinson does that and more. The Dolphins already have A-Chain. You have Mike McDaniel there. If the 49ers get a hold of him, I'm going to quit watching football. I don't want to see that. But I think he would be a great fit for the Cowboys. They run a high percentage of outside zone. At least in 2022, I know it was a slightly different system. They ran more outside zone than inside zone, which you don't see very often from NFL teams. And the Cowboys' number one running back right now is Rico Dowdle. Listen, I'm a big Rico Dowdle fan, but we need a lot more in that room. Well, yeah, our number 2 is Deuce Vaughn, so I don't know, man. We need some
fun. We love Deuce
Vaughn. We need some more in that offense. Especially we play so much under center with Dak now. So
yeah. Yep. Well, if that's it, if anyone no one has any comments on Carl's player, no. He played with Jonathan Taylor, you said?
Yeah, I think it was probably like his freshman year on Wisconsin and Taylor's senior year, or maybe like, well, he's a fifth year. Taylor played 4 years at Wisconsin. They played Wisconsin together.
Gotcha.
So a couple years ago.
That's crazy. I didn't know that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that just about wraps up this episode of the Zoned In podcast. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate the support. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, follow all social media platforms, including TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. We'll keep the episodes coming every week. And when we see you next time, it's going to be baseball season, baby. 5 more days. Until then, we're always zoned in.